We are doing Journey, a tribute to Duncan Browne. And if you haven't heard of Duncan Browne, keep listening. You'll soon find all about the late, great Duncan Browne. Duncan Browne sadly died on May the 28th, 1993, and his career spanned from about 1967 right up to his death in 1993. So over 25 years, he recorded 7 albums. One of them was released posthumous, and one of them was in a band called Metro, released in the mid-70s. So we're going to cover his career, and to help us cover his career, we've got a whole array of guests, friends and colleagues of Duncan Browne. A special guest all the way from London, England, Lin Browne. Lin, thanks for coming.
Hello Nick, it's great to be here. Fantastic place to be in a lovely city.
I want to start off by asking you, how did you meet Duncan?
I was working in television. I was working in casting at Granada Television, and Duncan came along to write the music for a series called Travelling Man, which I was working on, and we kind of met.
You fell in love?
Yeah, we did, kind of. I think I fell in love before him. But no, we got together and we're inseparable after that, really, and got married a few years later.
Was it a long courtship?
Quite long, actually, yes. It was several years before we actually got married. But unusual.
You knew he was a musician?
Yeah, I did, obviously. And I knew he was a close friend of a friend of mine, Sebastian Graham Jones, and they'd collaborated on a lot of theatre work, where Sebastian directed and Duncan wrote the music. So I kind of met Duncan through Sebastian.
What attracted you to the music as well as the man?
I think because it was at a time when people were always the music was very loud. I met music generally that was being listened to was very loud, and Duncan's music always had words that you could understand and hear, and I thought they were quite poetic. His words were quite poetic, and I didn't really at the time know how many albums he'd made. I was only aware of his sort of latest stuff and the work that he was doing for television, and then as I got to know him better, I realised he had sort of 8 albums to his name, and he was in the process of writing a musical, and he had a kind of classical background as well, which I was unaware of. So as I got to know Duncan Browne the man, Duncan Browne the musician also unfolded, and there was quite a lot there to tell.
So he wrote lyrics, because we're actually speaking to one of his lyricists from England, David Bretton.
David Bretton, yes. David and Duncan go back a long way, and they were still in touch right up until the time of Duncan's death. We all had dinner together probably just a few months before he died. And David and I are still in touch. In fact, we had dinner in London about 4 weeks ago, which was lovely. We reminisced a lot. In fact, I think David probably knows more about my husband than I do.
I certainly hope not, Lee.
He's not going to let any secrets out of the bag, I hope.
After David Bretton stopped writing lyrics for Duncan, did Duncan start writing his own then? Or?
Well, they wrote together for a while, and then I'm not quite sure what happened. David will tell you about that. But they went on, and they stayed friends, but they didn't collaborate anymore. Duncan's career was always changing direction. I think he just had a different manager and a different record deal, and I'm not quite sure what happened. So we'll ask David. He can throw some light on it.
Certainly. Hello, David.
Yeah, I'm still here, Nick.
Thanks very much for taking time to talk with us.
Hi, David.
Hi, Lynn. Just to let you know, you're both a bit faint.
Well, we'll shout.
Yeah, you're good at that, Lynn.
How dare you?
All right, calm down, people, calm down. David, just want to ask you, whereabouts are you?
In a little village, sort of west of Oxford.
Welcome, David Bretton. We're going to call you David Bretton.
Yep, fine.
Lyricist for Duncan Browne, especially on Give Me, Take You. I've got my special guest, Lin Browne, in the studio as well. And David, I just want to start the ball rolling by asking you, how did you first meet Duncan?
Duncan? Well, I met Duncan. We were both at drama school together. And we met up there, basically. We sort of didn't really bump into each other very often, but when we did, we kind of got on. And then from there, we just developed a friendship.
When did it turn creative and professional?
Right. Well, that happened when he and I both left the drama school at the same time. And Duncan was talking, or in negotiation, or had been signed up, I think, actually, by Immediate Records, Andrew Oldham. Mm-hmm. And Andrew, in his usual way, had said to him, right, well, fine, but we need some songs and we'd like an LP out of you. And Duncan was very accomplished, as you know, musician, excellent, wow, what a guitarist. But he wasn't very into lyrics and writing stuff. And he knew I was, because we talked and so on. And he just said, look, I've got this deal with the record company, but I need lyrics. I need somebody to work with. Will you come and, and co-write with me? And I said, yeah, sounds great. So I did.
What made him ask you? He knew your work? He loved your work?
Well, he knew me as a person. I mean, we used to talk, in those days, of course, because we were quite young, and it was that time of, late 60s, and everything was a bit kind of airy-fairy, and we used to talk about things, sort of ethereal things as well as kind of, as well as normal things. We talk about sort of passions and things like that, and I used to sort of spout my own poetry, which I used to write. But I only used to do it to Duncan, because we got on and we could just sit down and chill out together. And he just said, there's some really good stuff you've got there. We could develop that. And I have lots of ideas in my head. Things are buzzing around in my head and through my body. And I just sat down and said, yeah, fine, let's do it. And we developed this writing partnership.
Do you know David and Lin? How did Duncan get this record deal with Andrew Loog Oldham?
Oh, I don't know. David will know.
Do you know David?
Well, I think I wasn't into that kind of negotiation at the time, because I never signed up to Immediate. But
so who paid your checks?
Perhaps you're still waiting for them.
Yeah, we're still waiting for them. Immediate did, but I got paid as a kind of freelance, if you like. Whereas Duncan was contracted to them, and sort of quite tightly bound up in a contract, and I never wanted to do that.
How did they find him, though? Did they? Because I don't know.
I think it was through just somebody who Duncan had played guitar, because Duncan always used to carry his guitar around with him wherever he went, as you remember. And at the drop of a hat or the swallowing of a pint or two, he'd whip it out and you got the expression, and he'd play, So
probably some cafe in Chelsea.
No, it was usually sort of at some party, or it would be sort of you were just sitting around in the evening or whatever, and I think he got connected with. There was another guy who worked with him early on.
Not Davey Morgan, was it?
Davey, yeah, that's right. And Davey, I think, introduced him to the kind of record community, if you see what I mean. Andrew Oldham was always looking for new and different talent. I mean, they were quite a good label at the time, Immediate, and he just sort of said, yeah, this is different, and it's it's very acoustic and so on, and he did it from there.
Andrew Loog Oldham didn't have to vet you or anything like that, David? Duncan's recommendation was good enough to get you. I mean, it'd work very different today. I mean, I don't think they would have probably had the album there recorded already and then released it.
But didn't you probably just write the stuff and submit it, and it was a fait accompli, rather than, can I use this guy, is he okay? It was probably like, here are the songs.
Yeah, well, Duncan got Duncan had already got the contract, you see, so he's actually committed to producing this LP. So he said yes, quite wisely. I mean, you don't say no to anything. Yeah. And he'd obviously got, he got the contract there, and they'd said, okay, well, you've got like 6 months to produce this or whatever it was. And he sort of, I think, panicked a bit and thought, right, okay, now what do we do? And he just sort of said, yeah, I'll produce it, don't worry, I'll get it done. And so I think initially they thought, well, fine, Duncan's going to produce the whole thing. He's going to write the lyrics and the music, and they were quite happy with that. And as it transpired, I did the lyrics, but Andrew never questioned or never got uptight about it. We just toddled along there and said, right, this is the first couple of tracks, and he said, yeah, fine.
But you were acting by this time, and you were in a long-running series, weren't you? So how did you find the time to do the both?
Oh, it's just because I'm genius. It's as easy as that. Well, you just do, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
When you're actually excited about something, and Duncan and I got on so well that we could work because we'd work at like midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. And very often we'd just sit up all night, and he'd just play me some stuff, and he'd say, look, I've got some music here, what does it suggest to you? And I'd think, right, okay, fine, I'll write lyrics to that, and I used to sit down and do that. Or I'd come up with, I'd say to him, I just scribbled down this, what kind of music would you, and he'd sort of look at it, and he'd play something, and we'd think, yeah, that sounds good. So that would happen. We didn't sort of start at 9 and finish at midday or something like that. We just used to work until we got fed up, and then we'd go to the pub, or we'd go for a walk, or we'd go for a drive or something.
When you wrote the lyrics, what inspired your lyrics there, David?
I suppose experience of my life, really, Nick, and people I knew.
How old were you then?
I'd be 21, 22, 21. Yeah, I'd be about 21, 22. But I'd had sort of quite an interesting sort of life to that date, and also my father had died just previously, and it had welled up a lot of emotions in me, and kindled a lot of kind of thoughts, quite introspective thoughts. And from that, the release, I guess, was some of the stuff I wrote. Because there's a stack of stuff that we wrote as well, which never got on the LP, and also stuff we wrote after the LP, which we were planning to do for the next LP, had Andrew got his act together. So, it just came out of really my head and my experience and people I knew and relationships I'd had, and also talking to people. And I picked up on a couple of stuff, things that Duncan had said about his own emotions, and I just put those down as well.
And who was Neil? The Death of Neil, the track we just heard. Well, it wasn't your father by any chance, no?
No. Neil wasn't actually a person. Well, there was a chap.
Somebody's dog or rabbit or something.
Well, it wasn't going to be called The Death of Neil originally. We just chucked it in for a laugh. But Neil didn't really exist. Neil existed only in terms of a name.
He was a
metaphor. Came out of me. Well, Neil was he was a stage designer that I knew. But I didn't know him all that well, and it just, the thing just tripped off my, when they said, well, what are you going to call this? And I said, it's the Death of Neil, and it just came out like that,
I love those lines on silent lips, his soul was kissed, and he at last was free.
Yeah, I think that, I think the music of it is really super. I think Duncan did such a good job on the music of that. It was lovely. And I was quite proud of the lyrics, although some of them are a bit pretentious, but then that was the era, we were in that kind of era.
That airy, fairy, hippy, dippy sort
it was,
of England.
It was all a bit sort of, as I say, a bit introspective and a bit kind of, the Martians are coming and all that stuff.
Was there an Alfred Bell if there wasn't a Neil?
No, that was just a name too.
Okay.
Oh no, that came off the side of a truck actually. It was
Plumbing supplies?
We were driving down. I had a beaten up, it's a wonderful old car, a Triumph Roadster, which Duncan used to like to ride around with me. And we'd put the top down and go off somewhere. And we were just driving along, and we'd written this, he got this music, and I was sort of running it through my head. And a lorry just came past us, and it was Alfred Bell, was the delivery company or something. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, so, and it fitted in with the kind of lyrics, Alfred Bell, Walk Up Today. It just kind of flowed out. So that was Alfred Bell. Okay.
Which series were you doing at the time, David? What did I ask you?
Well, I'd done a couple of TVs. I'd done a thing called Dixon of Dock Green, which was, nobody listening to this is going to know what I'm talking about. But it was an old series on television with a fellow called Jack Warner who played a Bobby, and it was all very kind of come along chummy, I'm feeling your collar kind of thing. And I was in that for a while, and then I did another program called Gamblers, but I was also in a series over here called Crossroads, which everybody in the UK will remember.
Crossroads. One of those serials. One of those long-running series.
It was the precursor of things like, Neighbours and all that stuff. All the soaps. It was one of the first kind of soaps. yeah, really, moving stage flats that moved when you touched them, and some of it was live. So it was the pre-runner of some of that kind of stuff, of the soap operas, and I was in that for a while, which was quite fun, and it paid quite well. So I used to bomb down from Birmingham with a sort of pocket full of money, and that meant that we could go out and eat and do things, which is great.
Great for an artist to be able to eat.
It was like having a sponsor.
Besides the act, did you continue with the songs or the music, David, or was sort of that given away due to the success in the acting?
I think it was a combination of both, and also I think your life goes in kind of phases. Things you kind of drift out of until, especially when you're younger, and you try something else, and you put something to one side, and then you come back to it. As I say, we wrote lots of stuff. There's a whole tranche of stuff which would have gone on the next LP. Some stuff which I think would have been really good. So we were still, when the first LP was done, and we were trying to sort of see if it was going to be successful, we'd already written half of the next LP in anticipation, and then of course Immediate went bust. So that was that.
That's showbiz, as they say, yeah. Did any of these tracks get recorded on a little cassette tape recorder or anything like that, or?
Yeah, they did. They went on to what they called acetates, but alas, I didn't have control over those, so they went kind of into the black void of immediate, and I suppose they're still sculling around somewhere.
Lynn, have you ever come across them, or made attempts to?
I remember, I don't know if these are the ones you're talking about, but Andrew Lug Oldham rang me from Bogota and asked me if I wanted some old recordings of Duncan's once when he died, and then I never got them. But I think he has plans to re-release stuff. He did say he was thinking of it, so maybe he's hung on to them for that reason. But I think they were unreleased. Would they have been the same things? Is that perhaps what you were talking about?
Yes, could well have been. Because I remember we went to the studio and we laid down probably half a dozen tracks just as an acetate.
Yeah.
And so they are out there somewhere. And then there was a lot of stuff which was just now still just written on my paper. I've just got a book full of stuff.
Yeah.
They well could be some of Duncan's stuff, yeah.
Well, if you get some mysterious checks from South America, you'll know they're out. I wanted to ask you, David, I mean, looking back, I don't know if you pick a copy up of Give Me Take You and put it on the CD player or the turntable, whatever these days. Looking back, how does it look to you as the creator?
As one of the creators,
yes.
I think it stands up very well. I'd love to redo it, remix it, and change a few things because you could update it. But I actually think that it stands up quite well, and I do know. I was talking to a chap from Sanctuary Music over here who tracked me down. Remember Lin?
Yeah. I do remember. A couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, I've got the Sanctuary Music CD right here, David.
Yeah, the one.
Sorry?
The one they re-released.
Yeah, that's right. It was they put out back the compilation again, and they released quite a few tracks from various artists, and one was "Give Me Take You." And I spoke to that chap, and he was very nice, very complimentary, and he said, "Look, if I really had a stressful day," and he said, I go back and I put on Gavilan or something like that, and he said, I just lay back with a drink, and it just washes over me, and it just makes me feel good." And I thought, what a great compliment, if
yes.
nothing else, it's given somebody a great deal of pleasure.
What's your favourite one on the whole album? Do you have a favourite?
I don't know. I love The Death of Neil because I think it's such a lyrically, an accomplished thing. And I love Gavilan because it's very atmospheric. And I think Dwarf in a Tree is very funny. I like that. So I like quite a lot of it, actually. Then I would, wouldn't I?
Yeah, you're not biased at all, are you?
No.
David, tell me about this Time for Dreams, this Austrian movie that you were involved in, and we've got a picture of you and Duncan in these weird furry hats.
Yeah, furry hats.
Did you remember any of that?
I think they're small dogs, actually, we put on our head. Well, I mean, how long? You haven't got enough time, but it was that was very interesting. That was a wonderful experience. When I finished my life story, that will be a big chunk of it. It was just basically Duncan had done some music for this German film called Time for Dream or Zeit für Träume, and the chap who was directing it came over to this country with the proceeds of the money he'd got for doing the job, and he wanted to buy a Rolls Royce. And Duncan said, "Well, don't ask me." He said, "David, knows probably more about cars," which I didn't, but
you pretended.
But I pretended. Said, "Oh yes, a Rolls Royce, right? Excellent choice, old boy." And this guy was a German count. And anyway, the short story is that we managed to get this old 1938 Rolls Royce, and he said, "Right, now the thing is, I can't drive it really." He said, "Would you like to drive it to Vienna? And at the same time, we'll do some publicity for the film." So we did. Duncan and I just said, "Yeah, great, we'll do it." And we went off, and we drove down. We went to Munich, and we were interviewed by German radio, just like I'm talking now, really. But we were in the studio, and they interviewed us about the film and so on. And then we went off to Vienna, and so it was basically to promote the film. And there was another film in the offing as well, which I don't think ever got off the ground. It was the one I told you about, Lynn, which was not onomatopoeia, of course. I think it was a palindrome.
A palindrome.
Sorry, Nick, that's just...
I'll just have to work it out.
I'll tell you later.
Okay. And that was going to sort of be... Another film was going to be made, and so we probably would have got involved in that, but it never came off. And just quickly, and I'm taking out your time here, but that fancy dress business, well, it was middle of winter, and we were on the Austro-Hungarian border. It was bloody cold, I tell you. And we were in this castle, which was part owned by this Austrian count, but it was not a castle, you know, it was like something out of Dracula. I mean, there was no electricity. It was log fires. We had to build a fireplace before we could get warm and stuff like that. And in one of the rooms, there were this whole wardrobes of clothes, from like Napoleonic costumes and fur coats and fur hats. So we just put all this clobber on because we were pretty cold. And then we had the publicity man from the Time for Dreamers, who wanted to take publicity shots for the film, and so we dressed up in this stuff, and those were the photographs. And I've got I must have about 100 of them here.
I think you look really cool in them. I think they're really good.
It was great fun, actually. But you know, the old fur hats and the fur coats, it was great, and it was a wonderful setting. It was really like Transylvania. And of course, you know, it brought out of us, that's another thing, while we were in Vienna, we had such an interesting time with people, and again, we talked about what we wanted to do from there, because it excited us in terms of music and lyrics, and we had plans to make, to propose a musical, which we were going to put together, which I wrote quite a lot of libretto and lyrics down when I was down there. So all of that came out of that trip, and it would have been a very good musical. But there you go, never got to it.
Is the movie? Can we find it on DVD or video? Do you have?
I would think not.
No.
No, I would think it was quite a niche market. It was probably something that, in the old days, there used to be Bergman films and stuff like that, which were all like The Seventh Seal, and it was all kind of a bit cerebral and you know, people gazing off into the distance and so on. And I would imagine that, you know, it's one of millions of films which are archived somewhere. But I never actually saw it, actually. I don't think Duncan ever did.
Oh, really? Gee.
No, I don't think we actually saw it, because when you're doing music, very often you just see clips, and so you write bits of the music for the film. So we never actually saw it all the way through.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, if anyone's there listening out there digs it up, Time for Dream. No famous or Austrian or German actors, or went on a famous fortune?
No, George Clooney was just a lad there.
David, I want to ask, what are you up to at the moment?
Really, well, it's funny you should say that, because Lin and I met recently and had a drink and a chat.
Had plans for a musical.
That was before Duncan died with Duncan.
And I was just saying that I've come to a point now where I want a sort of life change, I think. I want to just to do something different. And what I'm probably going to be doing is try and resell myself as a writer, as a lyricist. I've got stacks of stuff here, which I've just shelved, and I'm now going to dig it out, and I'm going to try and see what I can do with it. And also, I did a TV play, and I'm sort of halfway through doing a book. So I want to really probably get back into that again before I die.
Elton John sometimes uses somebody else other than Bernie Taupin on the odd occasion.
I think he does. Yes, I'll give him a ring.
Give him a call.
I'm sure he'll take my call.
Well, who knows? He was a huge Nick Drake fan, and Duncan Browne sometimes gets lumped in with Nick Drake these days. So
he does get compared with Nick Drake.
So you know, he might know of Give Me Take You. Look, the reason why I picked it up, David, was the fact that I'd never heard of Duncan Browne, and I saw it was on Immediate, and you know, I love the Small Faces and anyone else who recorded on Immediate in the 60s, and so I picked it up. I had no idea who you guys were, and I liked it.
Well, all I would say in sort of for ourselves would be that it's a shame that it happened when Immediate was kind of
going bust,
hitting the skids, because I don't think Andrew took. I think it was only in the final throes of it when he got involved, and when he got involved, it actually made a difference. But I think he left everything sort of to everybody's own devices while he was sorting out his financial problems. And we were left alone, and at that age, when you get all that power of, you know, we're going to make an LP and we've got nobody there, well, you do what you think is right. And what it needed was somebody to take control of it and say, right, okay, well, I'm a professional producer here and I'm going to help you through this. And had Immediate still been going strong, I'm almost certain the LP would have sold more, and I'm positive that we'd have got a good second album quite quickly out of that. We'd have done another one.
But such as Immediate Records,
Nick, after all these years, here I am talking to you on Australian radio.
Well,
so isn't life funny?
Well, that's the thing, David. It's stood the test of time, and you know, I mean, we've already done a Duncan Browne special beforehand on the 10th anniversary of his death, so he's a bit of a cult following, bit of a cult legend, and anyone associated with him, even his wife, is sort of swept up. Swept up with that. So.
Well, I guess I suppose I was saying to Lynn that I guess I knew Duncan longer than probably anybody.
You were married to him before me, I think, weren't you?
Oh, absolutely. We were married long before you.
Absolutely.
But you know, then I knew his family very well, and I grew up. He didn't have a brother, nor did I, so we became very close. It's not sort of schmaltzy like saying we were brothers, but we were very much together. You could talk to each other. And I was a lot ruder than Duncan, and he was always very polite. But I knew his parents before his mother died, of course, and we all got on very well together. And it was like being part of a family. So I think that's probably why we got on quite well.
And I think that time actually has made no difference whatsoever, because I only knew you 12, 15 years ago or something now, maybe longer. But the closeness between you and Duncan was always there. You know, time had not sort of pushed you apart at all. It's quite interesting.
No, and that's why we could go for a long time without talking to each other and then pick up again, which was nice. And I often used to go down and see his parents anyway, and so it was great, you know. And I'm very happy that I knew Duncan, and that Duncan would have said the same about me, you know. But it was a good relationship, and it was a very, very productive one. And I'm very pleased with Give Me Take You. I thought it was a really good LP.
And we think so too. David, we've got to go.
Yep.
We're in a rush. Thanks very much for taking time to talk with us.
Bye,
You're
David.
welcome.
And we wish you best in your future project and lyrical pursuits.
I'll let you know, Nick. I'll when I make it back big again, I'll come and talk to you on and give you over one of my next records or something.
Fantastic. We'll look forward to it. Thank you very much, David Bretton.
All the best. Cheers, Lynn.
Okay,
Bye, Nick.
bye-bye. Duncan Browne special. I have got Lin Browne, the late Duncan Browne's widow, right with me, all the way from London, England. And what I wanted to ask you was, what did I want to ask? It's been a very tiring day. We've been showing Lynn around, beautiful countryside of Melbourne. And
He's walked my feet off.
no, you hadn't heard. That's one of Duncan's songs.
I had no idea it existed. That's the Ian Matthews cover from 1984. One of the many people that have covered Wild Places, I gather, and several of them I haven't heard. It's just weird for me to hear it, and I think it's a great cover version. I think it's really good. I enjoyed it.
Because we played Duncan's version a bit earlier. That's from the Wild Places. Duncan Browne released 2 albums in the late 70s. I think Wild Places was 78 and Streets of Fire was 79. Duncan Browne released Give Me Take You. That was his first album. Then a self-titled album on Mickey Most's Rack. And then he joined Metro, and we'll be talking to... Who?
Peter Godwin.
Peter Godwin, and...
There was another guy called Sean Lyons in the band, but Peter and Duncan were the 2 writers.
And the 2 singers, did they share vocals?
Shared the singing, yeah. They were both very strong writers and very strong personalities, and both very good looking.
And, of course, somebody very famous covered a Metro track called Criminal World and put it on his Let's Dance album.
That's right.
Lynn, and how did Duncan feel about that? Or
he was thrilled. He was thrilled by it. Yeah, I mean, it was quite an accolade to his he and Peter's writing that somebody like David Bowie wanted to cover stuff, and it's a good cover. I like the song. It's good.
Hello, Peter Godwin in England. How are you today?
I'm pretty good, Nick. How are you?
Oh, not bad.
Stormy weather out there?
Nice and summery. Lin Browne and I have been out bushwalking, seeing the native flora and fauna.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, yeah.
Good.
It's nice safe with me.
It's weird talking to you from Australia.
I know,
it's kind of freaky.
Modern technology, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
We're
nice
all
to...
in a room together.
Yeah, nice to hear from you.
Is it stormy out there? I thought you'd been up to your ears in water.
There were floods, but we're okay now.
That was just in the northern suburbs. Well, Australia's a pretty big place, so I'm surprised that you heard about it.
Oh, yeah, we get all the news here.
All right, Peter, well, let's start talking a bit about your association with the late, great Duncan Browne, and I want to start off by asking you, how did you come to meet Duncan?
Well, Duncan and I met actually we met in a pub, as English people so often do, you know. Yeah, we really met. It was really a twist of fate. You know, we met in a pub called the Prince of Wales in a part of Kensington called Holland Park in London, and we just kind of connected. Really, we first of all just became friends, and we both were obviously. I knew that he wrote songs and what he was doing, and I wrote songs. And the way that our kind of, if you like, our professional relationship started was, it really came actually from, it was actually in the same pub. It was one night, I was talking about a girl we both knew called Louise, and I just made a passing comment. She had this black lace wrap around her tan shoulders, and I said, oh, look at Louise's black lace shoulder. And Duncan said, that's a good song title. So I said, well, you know, be my guest kind of thing, use it. And a few days later, I went round to see him, as I used to, you know, just to sort of, you know, have a drink, say hello. And he was actually trying to write Black Lace Shoulder. He obviously had the title, and he had some chords, and he was trying to find where to go with it. And he said, do you want to have a go at writing this with me? And that really was the beginning of Duncan and I, you know, and you know, what later became Metro, and God knows, over 50 songs we wrote together. But that's how it began.
Had he heard of you? Had you heard of him?
I don't think he'd heard of me, actually. Because I hadn't had any sort of records in the charts or anything.
Yeah.
I was writing songs. I was actually writing. I was at university doing a thesis on American poets at the time, and I was writing songs. I'd had little bands and things that I'd been writing songs since I was a kid, since I was a child, you know. So I'd always done it, but it was more. I hadn't really done it professionally, you know. I had been into the studio a couple of times. But I'd never released anything. So he hadn't heard of me, but I'd heard of him, but I didn't know a lot about him, to be honest. I'd heard Journey, which had been, you know, a hit the year before, or a couple of years before, I think, actually, because I met him in 1973. Ooh, a long time ago, 30 years ago. Yeah. And then, of course, I listened to the album that he'd made. As I got to know him, I had a listen, because I found out there was this album, you know, that he'd made after Journey. And I really liked his original approach to everything. I liked his whole sensibility, if you like, and particularly the way he played, and it was just so original. One of my favorite songs, actually, from that period before we met is Country Song.
Oh, okay.
From the Rack album. I've always loved that song. I think it's got a lot of charm.
How did it develop into Metro with Sean Lyons?
Well,
was that a long gestation, or?
You could put it that way, Nick. Yes, it was quite a gestation there, definitely. Yeah, we were basically what we used to do is we used to get together. Duncan and I, at first, we would get together and you know, just write songs. We just had, and it just sort of evolved like that we were going to do something together. We would go round to this bar around the corner and have tea, or have called Julie's Bar, which is still there, and we'd have, you know, and we'd sit and talk, and then we'd come back and we'd write a bit more, and we just started writing all this material. In fact, the first thing that happened was about a year later, almost a year later, we actually recorded some of the tracks with Andrew Lou Golden, who'd worked with Duncan before.
Yes, on his first album. On his first album.
That's right, yeah. And Andrew, of course, is a bit of a legend in the music business, having sort of discovered the Rolling Stones and discovered a lot of people, and he's really kind of a seminal, you know, music business figure. And but by this time, it was after his immediate label had kind of gone down. You know, the album that Duncan did was on Immediate. And he was trying to set up a new label called Because Records, I think, that was going to go through Warner Brothers. And as so often is the case, it didn't happen. But we did go into the studio, and we recorded some of the tracks that would later go on that Metro album. We recorded, I think, Mon Messiah, Paris, a couple of others as well. But this was before Sean's involvement, and the way Sean got involved was really through Duncan's girlfriend at the time. Her name was Naomi, and she had a cousin called Sean. And, you know, he was 17, and she basically said, oh, you've got to hear my cousin sort of play guitar to Duncan, and some, you know, he came up one day, and I remember the first time I heard them playing together, I realized that they just had great sort of musical chemistry, and just the way that their playing kind of complemented each other. And so then it sort of became as if it was going to be a band, you know. It evolved into that. And we had all kinds of different false starts with different producers that wanted to produce the album. People like Tony Visconti at one point, Gus Dudgeon. Tony Visconti, of course, produced Bowie and Mark Bolan and all sorts of people. But none of that happened, and eventually we met somebody, and by then we really sort of knew pretty much what we were doing. We met this guy called Peter Sames, and decided to sort of make the album with him, and through him he had a production connection with a record label, which was Transatlantic, and that's how we got our first record deal. In fact, we got the deal sitting in Duncan's living room, just playing the songs and singing them acoustically, and they would just keep saying, oh, have you got another one? And we'd just sing another one, you know. It's not the sort of thing that really happens anymore. Now you have to sort of give them the finished album and the video and everything, but we just sat there and played those songs, and got the deal with Transatlantic, yeah. And then after that, Seymour Stein at Sire Records took an interest and put it out in America, which was good, you know. So yeah, it took a couple of years.
Who thought up the name Metro? Where did that come from?
I believe it was actually an idea of mine, but not one that I'm massively proud of. But it was, you know, it's always hard finding, every name is wrong, you know. I actually had this little book, this little white notebook where I kept putting names down, and we keep rejecting them. We had all kinds of silly names as well as, you know, sensible ones. And some of them that we thought were silly, like The Police and Magazine and The Clash, actually later on sounded like quite a good idea to other people. So I have this little book, I still have it, that has all these names in it. And one of the early ones was Metro, but from Metro, you know, from the French, really thinking, the idea that we had at the time was we wanted to do something that was kind of European, which now seems a kind of commonplace idea, really, because we're always talking about being Europeans. But we wanted it to be very English, but we also wanted it to have that background of, you know, our backyard, the continent that we all travel in, and where we have friends from, and we wanted to have that atmosphere. And also we thought, well, this is kind of, the feeling of this is sort of urban music, so it's like metropolitan. So that's really the idea. It was sort of supposed to be a kind of European feeling, metropolitan, urban, sexy kind of thing. That was the idea, anyway, behind the name. Whether it achieved it, I don't know. Unfortunately, of course, later on, I remember that when Ford suddenly brought out a car called the Metro, that was really, you know, it sort of took the magic out of it somehow.
I think you should.
But you know, all names are silly, aren't they, for bands? There aren't many names that, you know, don't seem silly at some point. You know. Maybe
you should have gone with the Clash or the Police.
Yeah, maybe. You know, maybe we would have had, you know, the same success. That wouldn't have been bad either. What's in a name? Obviously, after the first, you know, lineup of Metro, you know, the lineup with Duncan, after that split, and we sort of went our separate ways, and Duncan went back to doing solo records. So then I've written with a lot of other people. I produced some records, you know, in the sense of, obviously, in terms of arranging them and recording them. And I still write songs with different people.
Okay, Bretton. Speak to you soon.
It's nice to speak to somebody that, you know, basically appreciates Duncan, because he was a really great and rare talent, and definitely great loss. But he did leave us with some wonderful music, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Thank you.
Bye, Peter.
All the way from London, England, we have the late Duncan Browne's widow, Lin Browne. Lin, thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure. I'm having fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Good. You knew Colin Blunstone as well?
Yeah, for a while Duncan and Colin were in a band with Sebastian Graham Jones. They were kind of on the verge of signing a deal when Colin went off and did a solo thing and started on a different angle. I've still got the recordings at home, but sadly they were never released, although we did use a few of them on the Songs of Love and War album, which Colin Blunstone sings on, and Colin is still a dear friend.
And just wanted to ask, was he successful commercially as well as critically in this sort of cult around him? Did he have to have a day job?
No, never. Never. I mean, he did all sorts of things that people probably aren't aware of. He wrote things like, he actually wrote a news theme for the BBC World Service, which was on, I don't know, half a dozen times a day, every day, for many years, until just a few years ago. He wrote, he did a video for Linda Lusardi, who's a model. He wrote the music for that.
A music video,
a fitness video, basically.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He
Who's
did.
Linda
Lusardi actually was a topless model many years ago, but now she's an actress. And all sorts of stuff he did that people don't know about. He also did the music. He did a lot of BBC drama documentaries. He wrote the music for stuff like that. And posthumously, some music was used for a Welsh film, Salva May, which is a classical piece he wrote for a television series called Shadow of the Noose, which was sung by a coloratura soprano.
Was he playing music all around the house all the time?
All the time, every single day.
Didn't drive you nuts, did it?
No, I absolutely adored it. It would calm me down when I came home from work. He'd cook dinner and he'd pick up the guitar, so I was in heaven.
Was he sort of home all day?
Yeah, he worked from home. He had a studio in the house, but he used to go to record at a friend's studio, Nick Magnus's house, if he got work that needed to be of professional quality. So he would knock it together at home and then do it properly somewhere else.
And Nick Magnus completed Duncan's posthumous last,
yeah, Songs of Love and War. Nick sorted that out very well, and I'll be forever grateful to him, because without Nick it wouldn't have been released.
And just a final sum up on Duncan Browne.
One thing that I've always thought is that his terms of reference were kind of huge, unique and varied, and that was one of his charms, really. He filled my life with love and music, and that's all I'd like to say.
Well, that sounds like enough. And he fed you too, didn't he?
He fed me too. He was a great cook.
He was a good cook.